welcome everybody also from my part. I'll call my three speakers on the stage. Professor Parsi, Ambassador Regazzoni, and Bill Emmott. Please sit down.
Eccoci.
So we have three excellent speakers I have the pleasure with them to have a conversation for about 30 minutes. Ambassador Bernardino Regazzoni is a former ambassador for Switzerland of countries as France and China. We have Bill Emmott, which is a journalist and a writer. He has been editor-in-chief for 13 years of The Economist. And we have Vittorio Emanuele Parsi, who's a full professor of international relations in the Faculty of Political and Social Sciences at the Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore of Milano, and he also directs a master here at USI, at the Università della Svizzera Italiana. I would start right away with Professor Parsi. We heard a very interesting debate, two different visions of Europe, or better, if you think about what the former president of the Czech Republic just said. For him, Europe, it's not Europe that is failing, but it's the political and institutional structure of the UE which is failing or falling. So, on the other hand, we know a former president of the UE Commission said unity is still the way to go. It's difficult, but it's still the way to go. Can these two visions coexist? Aren't they harmful for Europe?
Thank you for the question. Thank you for inviting me. And the point is that the two visions are not compatible. One of the two visions has to prevail for showing us what will be the future of the Union. Because in my opinion, for sure, the Union cannot stay in the position that is occupying today. First of all, because the world is changing. And the two main aspects of the changing world, in my opinion, has been, on the one hand, the use of violence by Russia invading Ukraine in the last 4 years in Europe, one of the most institutionalized places in the world, in a place that was sharing a common culture, common history, and so on, showing us one point that is very difficult for us as Western Europeans or Central Europeans to accept. The idea that Russia, for sure, is a part of the European culture. But Russia has never been a part of European political European in the past. The ambitions and the goals of Tsarist Russian, Soviet Union, and Putin Russians are not compatible with our common goals and interests. There is nothing of Europeans inside the political Russian system, and that has never been. On the other hand, the most relevant changing in the momentum is the changing of the positioning of the US. The US are not just reshaping the West. The US were killing the idea of the West. What are doing is not probably reforming economy. It's not clear what the tariffs are doing in the long run in economic terms. But the result that the tariffs war was producing in political terms is here to stay. And it's the division between the US and Europe. I don't know if tariffs will have a success in making American economy great again. But for sure, they succeed completely in torpedoing politically European Union more than China. I mean, what Trump is doing is using economy to restore the central political position of the US in the world of today, not the central economic position of the US in the world of today. So we need to change. We need to change and to walk, jump, dive, I don't know what, swim, but to move from one position to another one. Take the attitude that you prefer.
Well, a deep change, a deep structural shift. Bill Emmott, what kind of deep structural shift can Europe take?
Well, first of all, I should also thank you and the organizers for inviting me here to Lugano. Great pleasure to be here. And of course, as you can hear from my voice, I'm a dangerous person in a European conversation because I'm British. I happen also to be a citizen of Ireland, so I'm riding both horses. I'm both a Brexiter and a Brexile, a European Union citizen. So, and I particularly focus my mind in this question on the biggest challenge that Europe has, Europe being a continent of which Britain is part, which is the war in Ukraine and the threat from Russia, as Professor Parsi started with. And the fact is that if we cannot resolve the war in Ukraine in a successful way, a way successful for the maintenance of security on the continent of Europe, and a way successful for the maintenance of the democracy and sovereignty of Ukraine, then the structural shift that's going to happen will be imposed on Europe. It will not be one we are making. And so I think the most important issue that we have to face as European countries is, are we really confronting the Russian threat adequately? Are we really coming together enough to support Ukraine and make it succeed? And of course, the most relevant organization for that is NATO rather than the European Union, but it is also the European Union now with the proposal to lend $140 billion to Ukraine on the basis of the frozen central bank assets that are sitting in Brussels. We're waiting to see if the European Union can achieve unity to make that loan and find some way to overcome the fears that Belgium has in particular, and then I think Britain also will make some loan in support of that. But the key point is we must focus on Ukraine. If we can resolve Ukraine, the benefit to the European economy will be enormous.
Okay.
Lower energy prices, lack of war, all sorts of things will follow from that. And everything else is a detail as far as I'm concerned.
But it's also true that war in Ukraine is still here after 3 years and a half. You must recall in 2022, in July, we had a conference here, the Ukraine Recovery Conference. So Ukraine is not recovering yet. Ambassador Regazzoni, how useful are these conferences, and what should also Switzerland do more for the resolving or accelerating the war in Ukraine, since it organizes conferences like the one in Lugano, but also the one last year in the heart of Switzerland? Switzerland is part of Europe, and so what should Switzerland do?
Yes, let me start from this point. I think I do not believe in a Swiss exceptionalism. I think all what has been discussed today concerns Switzerland too in the first place. I am, from this point of view, without supporting the whole of the position of President Klaus, but I feel deeply a full-fledged European in the first place, because I think as living on this continent. So that the situation of Switzerland in this sense is not different from the situation of every other European country. I think the aggression of Russia on Ukraine is a threat on the security also of Europe and also of Switzerland. And I think the efforts about reconstruction or preventing, I do not believe especially in magic formulas. You know, in the first place, I don't know in English how do you say that, bons office, you know, like if Switzerland would have the magic formula to sort out this region, every kind of conflict. But I think when we will come to the moment of considering Ukrainian reconstruction, Switzerland will have also its role to play. One point which is very popular in Switzerland is, of course, the one about neutrality. And in this case, I do not think that it is a magic formula which, for the fact of being simply repeated, it provides us with security automatically. I do think that our security nowadays in Europe comes with additional or further developing cooperation with Europe, with the NATO in the first place, respecting our neutrality, which is a matter of identity for the largest majority of Swiss, but we do have to further cooperate to provide our security also with NATO, which is the actor number one of security in Europe.
Yes, then Professor Parsi, we know that Europe is stuck in this war, in the Ukrainian war, squeezed perhaps in decisions like Trump decisions or Putin decisions. And we know that Trump, who was elected 1 year and a week ago, wanted to stop this war right away. Then after the Anchorage summit, he noticed that Putin wouldn't follow him so quickly. So how can, or if Europe can win this war without the states?
It depends. I mean, it depends. But what do you mean when you say without the United States?
Well, we don't know if United States really, or more than United States, is Donald Trump who really...
No, it was a rhetorical question.
Okay, so...
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit grippe, you know. So it's difficult even for me to understand sometimes what I'm saying for the grippe, the flu. If you intend without the political leadership of the US,
yeah.
I think that we are doing yet. We are dealing with Russia and Ukraine without any confidence on which will be the permanent attitude of Washington toward the cause. It's not clear. It's not clear what Trump wants to do today, tomorrow morning, tomorrow in the afternoon, and imagine in the next week or so. So this is the reality, and we are managing this reality. Of course, we need the material help of the US in terms of having the possibility to buy American weapons. That in the meanwhile, the huge meanwhile, we are trying to provide for ourselves these kind of technologies that we need for modern warfare. Okay, and then we need to buy them. But I think that, and in this point I agree completely with Emmott. I mean, that's the point. This is not an option for us. The Ukrainian crisis is a global crisis in terms of the new architecture of the international system. But for us, the Europeans, is a regional crisis that is occurring in our region. It's much more vital than any other war or crisis that we are facing today, much more vital for immediate surviving of us than the long-term developing of American-Chinese relationship or then the development of the Middle East or also other ways. This is just in our courtyard, in our center of Europe. So I think that we need to do that. I agree with the point that the two presidents were doing before. On one hand, we cannot transform European Union in a sort of European empire. We cannot follow the suggestion of China or Russia or the US and dreaming of empire. First of all, because we were experimenting real empires in our history and it was a disaster. Centuries of war. So there is nothing charming in the word empire for us because we experimented. And then because the European Union was born just to control sovereignties, not to enhance sovereignties, but to control sovereignties. And not with the idea to substitute the national sovereignties with a new central sovereignty, but trying to find the way to coordinate local sovereignties and to push them toward a convergence. So we don't have the suggestion to transform the republic in an empire. There will be no august momentum to pass from Romana Respublica to Principatum. Our destiny is to remain a Respublica, but to have a stronger republic, a stronger republic to be able to defend the freedom, the internal freedom from the pressure of foreigners' empires, the Chinese, the Russian, and unfortunately, even the American in this period.
And then there's naturally also another big topic, which is the trade tariffs. We know Bill Emmott, Trump put the world upside down in spring. Nowadays, the federal court is deciding or is started with these hearings about the decision of Donald Trump, if it's legal or illegal. Will something change for Europe, do you think, if the federal court will say that the trade tariffs are illegal?
I think an important background reality that we should accept about the tariffs is that a decision that was made centrally at the European Commission, but with input of the nation states, was: do we retaliate or do we not retaliate? Do we want to fight this outrageous decision by America to throw away the World Trade Organization, throw away 70 years of trade negotiations and principles of non-discrimination? Do we want to fight it, or do we want to just deal with it, accept it, and then hope that we can negotiate it away in 3.5 years' time when a new president and a new administration comes in? And we decided, and Britain also independently decided to take the second strategy, not fighting it, and then instead to mitigate it, to manage it. And that means that we don't have a trade war happening in the world. The only country that is retaliated in a trade war type way is China. And they have kind of fought to a standstill. That is actually good for the world that we don't have a trade war, because this could have been a really damaging thing for the world economy. So if the Supreme Court says that Trump was exceeding his powers, which is a domestic political issue in the American Constitution, I don't think it changes a fundamental reality for Europe and for the UK, which is that we're managing this change of the pace of the terms of trade between us and America for the next 3 years, in the hope that in the long term we might return to some sort of more generally negotiated trade. Because the further reality is that in trade, America is not the world. America is 12-13% of global trade. More than 85% of trade is not America. And Europe is an important part of that, and our relations as countries, as the European Union, with Indonesia, with Japan, with the Global South, with all sorts of countries in the world, are as important as the ones with the United States. So I think that we as Europeans have to think more positively about ourselves as leaders of a free trading world, an open trading world, Switzerland the same. And of course, what happens in America is interesting and important, and it gives me something to write about for La Stampa every week. So I benefit. But nonetheless, what really matters is the multipolar world that President Klaus talked about.
Yes, absolutely. But Ambassador Regazzoni, we also must think that Swiss economy, Swiss finance is worried about these trade tariffs. We know that last week 6 big entrepreneurs from major firms, Rolex and so on, went to and talked face to face with Trump. They brought very precious presents to Trump. And Trump should come here in January, perhaps he'll come. He's been invited to the World Economic Forum. We'll have a new president. It won't longer be Karin Keller-Sutter, but Guy Parmelin. Do you think something will change for Switzerland? I think that the audience is very interested in knowing if in the next 2 months something will change for Switzerland in trade tariff.
I would say something has changed. It was a very tough awakening on the 1st of August to wake up and being slashed by 39% of tariffs. So awakening in the world of force instead than in the world of rules, where we are our natural place, our natural environment. And I think this is not going to change. As of course, we have to aim to an agreement with the United States. If it works, let's go there with business people instead of government representatives. If it works, if it is necessary to bring in watches and gold bars, let's do it. It's not particularly stylish from the point of view of the one who receives that, but if it works, let's do that. But I think that it's not going to change, for the substance. The word, even with an agreement, which I wish will come as soon as possible with the United States, won't be suddenly again a word of rule instead of a word of force. There is a high level of homogeneity, homogeneous with our environment, which is the European one, which is predictable. It is not purely arbitrary, but predictable in this sense. I think that it is in our foremost interest to have a stabilized, stable relation to our environment, even geographic, the European one, and we'll have some occasion in very next years to settle this issue. And last, also, let's be aware about, also we have been discussing about the weaknesses from the point of view of governance, from the point of view of polity of Europe, this impossibility after 2005 to take decision. It does not concern us as a Swiss in the first place, but it is our environment. But let's be aware that as a European, we live in the only place in the world where rule of law is not threatened. So it's already something from my point of view. Then is 12% or more important? I think that we have other trade partners as well, but not just trade. I think that from the point of view of rule of law, Europe is the place of rule of law still. From the point of view of innovation, everybody forgets about that because they think, oh, it has to be automatically China. Not at all. I know well this point because the World Intellectual Property Organization has put Switzerland for the 14th year in a row at place number 1. Therefore, allow me to know this ranking very well. But 7 out of the 10 first countries are European countries. And China is ranked number 10. Therefore, I mean, this poor Europe, which has a lot of problems, but also it has a lot of cards to be played. But in the first place, we must be aware about that.
And then, Professor Parsi, it's also true, Europe has the means to wake up, but it doesn't. Because it's the uncertainty. It hasn't had a good relationship or a different or uncertain relationship to the States. A very uncertain relationship to Russia, to China, we know. And so if Europe, Ambassador Bernardino just said, or Bill Emmott, we have the means to wake up, but the economy is still struggling. So what are the means through which Europe should wake up?
I think it's not a problem of means as the basic problem. The basic problem is the political will. That's the point. I mean, do we want to change, to transform Europe in a stronger republic to be able to really protect our freedom and liberty, our rule of law, the property, the property rights that are much more protected now in Europe than in the US. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. We want to protect our diversity from the push to force homogenization coming from outside. This is the strong point. To get this target, it is very ambitious, but in extraordinary times, if you want to survive, you need to be ambitious, because surviving is an ambitious goal. So there is no other tool. If you want to do that, the point is to change your mind and to make even only the few little steps that you can. So multiple geometry, variable structure for having steps in toward common defense, common foreign policy, and so on. Even forcing a little bit the existing treaty. And we will stay, will be preferring to come out and thinking that to be lonely with this Russia, this the US, and the China always would be a safer position. Okay, it's up to him or to her. I don't think that it's very safe, but that's a free country at the end of the day. So if the Hungarians want to come out, the door is open.
But still, Romano Prodi said, Bill Emmott, political distance in the UE is a fact. And may I ask you this question in one way? Is the UE a sort of money dispenser for the countries, or do we really need it as a condition politically?
Well, I think that the greatest successes of the European Union have been actually through what you could call processes of mutual disarmament. In other words, the single market, the state subsidies system, were agreements between countries, first 9, then 12, then 15, then blah, 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 that were about agreeing to disarm and remove things that were barriers to competition, barriers to open markets, that were harming us, but we weren't willing without that to do it. And I think that the biggest agreement that currently is necessary within the European Union is a further process of that agreement in mutual disarmament, which is about the single market. So I absolutely admire the Draghi report, but I admired more the Letta report, the Enrico Letta report, which was about let's open these markets, let's get the markets, the digital markets unified, let's get the banking market unified, and then allow companies to compete on an equal basis in this big market. I think that that would be my priority number one for the European Union to do, which is to pursue what it's always done best, which is agreements at mutual disarmament about restrictions to the way markets work, and then leave companies to work out how to do it. But I go back, I have to repeat again before we close, the most important thing is to bring the Ukraine war to a successful conclusion, because when that happens, the economic boost to Europe could be dramatic, and substantial, but also the political help to Europe will be important. All our countries have tensions over immigration, and one big component of those tensions is about Ukrainian refugees. Many of them will then go home, because they'll want to. In my country, Ireland, a large number of the growth in population that's happening have been Ukrainians. Ireland has been wonderfully welcoming, but many of them will go home once the war is finished, and that will reduce some political tensions. So I think single market, free competition in markets, and Ukraine would be my agenda.
Yeah, and about the war in Ukraine, at this Lugano Global Forum, we'll continue talking. And it's also true that you must know that in Ukraine right now, people are still fighting, people are still dying. Prokofsk, the town in the eastern part of Ukraine, has been practically in the hands of the Russian troops, so it's something very actual which is really happening right now. So I must thank my three speakers for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.